Welcome to Fox Soul's Black Report, your daily source for Black news, Black views, and Black opinions. Happy Monday. It is May 9th, and I'm Mimi Brown.
I'm Romeo.
I'm Demi Lobo, and on today's report, abortion rights protests took place around the nation this weekend, strategizing on how to protect a woman's right to choose. Meanwhile, Candace Owens is accused of harassing one of the co-founders of the Black Lives Matter organization. The shocking details that have her fearing for her safety. Then, a Chicago mother says she had to fight for custody of her child after a birthmark was mistaken for a bruise. We have the story.
Plus, Beyonce has been nominated for her first Daytime Emmy Award, and Pete Davidson makes jokes about Kanye West doing a comedy festival. We're going to talk about all of that and so much more. It is our voice and our truth, so let's get it.
The Georgia primary is just weeks away, and there are several key races there, including Stacey Abrams' run for governor and Senator Raphael Warnock. He's preparing a fight against a Republican challenger. The new Georgia Project is working to get African Americans registered to vote and to the polls for the upcoming election cycle. Joining me now to talk about it is the CEO of the new Georgia Project, Nse Ufot. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So Stacey Abrams, her run for governor, it came up short in 2018 by about 50,000 votes, but it showed that Democrats that it was very possible to win the state. How is the new Georgia Project working to close that gap this time around?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that the 2018 governor's race in Georgia showed a little bit more than what was possible. It also highlighted in very clear terms that voter suppression in our country is not a relic of the past, that it has gotten, in fact, much more sophisticated and with, data scientists as opposed to, like they say, that James R. Crow Esquire. And so it exposed it as a problem that was suppressing Black votes, Black turnout, and the results of Georgia's elections. And so when I think about the work of the new Georgia Project going forward, we have registered over 600,000 young people and people of color in all 159 of Georgia's counties. We've literally moved millions of people to the polls and sort of built an infrastructure that is designed to understand how Black votes are being suppressed and to neutralize the impact and to make sure that the will of the people is reflected in the results of our elections so that we can have a healthy democracy that people can continue to participate in, not just so that a particular candidate can win, but so that we can have a functioning democracy that includes Black voices and Black votes.
You brought up voter suppression, and I know that there's a lot of new laws in Georgia that are targeting voter suppression and tactics by Republicans to dilute the Black vote. There's also a lot of disinformation looking to discredit Abrams and her work. But how is the new Georgia Project working against that disinformation machine?
Yeah, I think that, well, one, there's a thing that says that we say that you cannot fix what you have not faced. And so being very clear, if it's from the Mueller report or if it's from our very own eyes and our timelines, understanding and recognizing that Black voters and Black Americans and Black consumers of media are prime targets of disinformation from bad actors, both foreign and domestic. And so studying that environment, what is poisoning the wells that people get their information from? And then experimenting with different interventions. So we've hired a number of digital organizers that are just here to do that, to combat disinformation with the truth, so that the new Georgia Project can be seen as a reliable source of information about the world that is around us. We're learning much more about how these algorithms work on the platforms and also doing an extraordinary amount of digital media literacy as a part of our popular education. Like I said, we have millions of high quality face-to-face conversations and conversations online and in text messages and in phone calls with young people and Black Georgians every year. And so, again, digital media literacy as a part of our overall popular education is a powerful intervention and a powerful tool against disinformation and misinformation.
Yeah, it definitely is. You know, you brought up young people, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the young people who went to the polls in 2020 and how some of them may be disillusioned with the voting process. You know, we're still waiting on voting rights to be passed in Congress, and student loan forgiveness is still somewhere in the works. But how do you convince that young group that voting is still one of the best ways to get things done when they see a deadlock in Congress?
Yeah, we're talking about a fight here. And again, it's not just about parties. It's not actually, in fact, it's not about parties at all. The idea is that there are real things that young people in Georgia want to win for themselves, for their families, and for their communities. And there are people that we need to send to Washington, D.C. or to the state capitol in Atlanta in order to get those things done for our families. So here's the thing, student loan debt forgiveness, that's a real issue that young people want to see happen in their lifetimes. It's a racial justice issue, gender and economic justice issue. And so big thing, the fact that only $9 million, the fact that only $9 billion has been forgiven to this point is a good thing. But if we are seeking to make that our reality, make that policy our reality, we're going to have to show up in November in order to make sure that we elect a Congress that can support this administration in making that happen. Student loan debt forgiveness, again, is a priority, and it's mobilizing and animating. And so getting people recruited and involved in the fight and seeing the November elections as a part of that fight is how we are seeing young people getting mobilized and animated in this moment.
Yeah, you know, student loan debt is a really big deal for young voters. I know we talk about it a lot here on the show. We're running out of time, but I wanted to ask you really quick. I know the new Georgia Project is using some traditional methods on educating voters, getting out the vote, going, door to door, phone banking, things like that. But your group is also using video games to get the vote out. Explain how, using non-traditional methods for voters is making it more possible to get more people out into the polls.
Yeah, we want to change the culture of our democracy. We want to change the culture of democratic participation and the culture of our elections. And so what do? We work with culture workers. We work with people who are making culture. So that doesn't always mean bad auntie rap parodies. Doesn't always mean awkward TikTok dances. Sometimes it means leaning hard into gaming and game culture. Young people watch people play video games all the time. There is an entire culture of Black folks in the gaming world. And so we have registered over 600,000 people. We have over 500,000 people's phone numbers. Why not get into people's phones in other ways as a way to remind them about their civic duty?
Love that. That is so good. Nse Ufot, thank you so much for being here. You are the CEO of the new Georgia Project. Can't wait to have you back and see what happens after the May 24th primary. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thousands of women and pro-choice supporters around the nation took to the streets over the weekend to show their anger with the leaked Supreme Court memo that discusses overturning Roe versus Wade. This is a rally in Houston. Beto O'Rourke, who is running for governor, was joined by several thousand women and abortion rights supporters. Now, dozens of other rallies took place around the nation, and it comes as Democrats and pro-choice activists strategize on how to protect a woman's right to choose. A vote on a bill to codify abortion is expected on Wednesday in the Senate. That bill is all but certain to be blocked by Republicans, falling short of the 60 votes needed to get past a filibuster.
Donald Trump's ban from Twitter, it will continue. A San Francisco judge Friday tossed out a lawsuit from the former president. U.S. District Judge James Donato said Trump failed to show Twitter violated his First Amendment right to free speech, and free speech does not apply to privately owned companies. The judge says Trump failed to show Twitter was working as a state actor on behalf of Democrats. Twitter, along with Facebook and YouTube, banned Trump after the January 6th insurrection. The company said they took the action to prevent Trump from inciting more violence.
And a Black Trump supporter will represent the congressional district of Indiana this fall. Jennifer Rith Green, an Air Force veteran, beat her opponent by 30% to win the first congressional district Republican primary. Green was a newcomer in politics, and she's promising to advance Trump's America First policies. She spent most of her campaign bashing her opponent, a Navy veteran, for not supporting Trump hard enough.
North Carolina's highest court is refusing to hear an appeal by civil rights leader Reverend William Barber's trespassing conviction during a 2017 demonstration. Barber was arrested inside North Carolina's State House, and Reverend Barber asked the court to review his case and his 2019 trial. Now, the court also granted the request of state attorneys to dismiss the appeal motion from Barber's lawyers. Now, jurors, they found that Barber was guilty after he led a demonstration of about 90 people outside of a senator's office. Now, the justices said that Barber's free speech rights were not harmed by his arrest. They say he was removed because of how loud those demonstrators' chants were. Barber received a suspension, 1-day sentence as well, and a paid $200 fine.
A Tennessee Christian school is disciplining a white student after a video of him in a Ku Klux Klan attire yelling racial slurs ended up on social media. Officials at the Grace Christian Academy in Knoxville said they have taken swift action with severe disciplinary action against the student. On the video, a person off camera can be heard telling the hooded person to talk, and the person in the hood proceeds to shout the N-word as others in the background begin to laugh. Representative Gloria Johnson of Knoxville called the video distressing in a tweet. She says the issue of racism in schools may get worse as school leaders are facing threats from state lawmakers about teaching historical facts about race.
And Patrisse Cullors, one of the co-founders of Black Lives Matter, says conservative influencer Candace Owens is harassing her at her home.
It's unacceptable and it's dangerous that anybody, any stranger, come outside of my house, but it's really unacceptable and dangerous when Candace Owens, another Black woman who is actually working as a part of a right-wing agenda, comes outside of my house with cameras. I'm going to keep doing the work I need to do to make sure that I'm in right relationship with my community, but I'm not going to let the right-wing and right-wing pundits and media try to drive me against my community and have the community driven against me.
Cullors says Owens came to her home over the weekend to confront her about the Black Lives Matter Foundation property. Back in April, BLM purchased a $6 million property in Southern California. The group says the property will be used as a space for Black creators, but critics like Owens don't believe that. In a video, Cullors breaks down into tears and speaks about her safety. She says she no longer feels safe. But Candace Owens, she is responding and posting a video of her own. She says she sat inside of her car with a camera crew and politely asked the security guard if she could speak to anyone. She says no one asked her to leave. Listen, you can be upset. You can want to find the money. You can, be doing a documentary, but you cannot just show up to someone's house and demand that they come outside. And here's the thing about Candace Owens. I need for her to keep that same energy. I'm sure there are white ring or white, all the same wing people who are hiding money, doing certain things. And I'm not saying that BLM is hiding money, but I'm just saying, I need her to keep that same energy. In fact, President Trump is under investigation for a lot of similar things. There's, where's the campaign money? Where's donor money? And she's never brought that to him. But she tends to come after BLM and other Black people.
It's really sad that it had to be BLM, but I will say I've never agreed with Candace Owens. I do believe that what she did was wrong, showing up to someone's house. But we do have to also admit here that we do have some similar questions about BLM. I will speak for myself here that I have had similar questions, and there are many people that have similar questions about what happened. And so actually there was a story that landed in the AP today where Patrisse Cullors did admit that she did use the house a couple of times, twice, for her own personal use. Once for a party with Joe Biden and VP Kamala Harris, and then again for one of her son's birthday parties. And so, again, not taking away here, this was wrong. You cannot pull up to a person's house. But for years, if I could try to separate them for a second here, for years, BLM has been plagued with this question about what has this house really been used for?
Agreed, yeah. There's a lot of unanswered questions, but like I said, you can't pull up to my front door. I mean, we understand sometimes it happens for the mayor here in Los Angeles. People show up to Hancock Park. They would do that when they want to protest. But you're talking on someone's house, their privacy, and then you're invading their space. If you have questions, there's places you can go. You could have showed up at the house that BLM purchased churches. Maybe show up there and see if you can talk to someone, but not to their personal home. That's out of pocket.
And also, too, this went on and on and on. So when Patrice Cullors was on Instagram Live and she was telling her audience, followers, yes, about what was going on, Candace Owens was literally sitting in the car, like trolling her in a way, like taking video of it. So it got really, it wasn't even like a official, like, hey, I'm coming to serve you this, I want to know what's going on. It was almost like a for a stunt.
And if you're doing a real documentary, you call the person, you call their PR person, you set up a time for an interview. You don't just show up at someone's house and demand that you speak to them. And you're right, she was trolling her, right? She did this for social media to get this out there and to kind of make this a scene. That's not how you do it. And so when you go on social media and you say, well, why is she upset? I'm pregnant. I wasn't going to do anything. She doesn't know that. She has no idea. Absolutely. She's some stranger showing up at her house. That's all she knows.
And the saddest part is two black women. You know, that's really, really, really a sad story. So we'll definitely keep you updated on that story. New court documents reveal one of Ahmaud Arbery's killers they called the former Georgia district attorney 15 times in the days after his murder. Yes, you heard that correctly. So Greg McMichael, who once worked for DA Jackie Johnson as an investigator, was convicted in the murder of Arbery. The phone call suggests that even though she recused herself from the case, Johnson was keeping the former employee in the loop about the investigation. Johnson has been indicted for 2 felony accounts, one for violating her oath of office and for the obstruction for allegedly telling 2 officers not to arrest Travis McMichael.
Federal bank regulators are proposing an old law that is meant to prevent redlining. Redlining is the practice of banks not lending to people of color, especially African Americans. The aim is to modernize the Community Reinvestment Act. The act evaluates banks on how much lending they're doing in their areas. They have branches. It comes after failed efforts during the Trump administration that was criticized for possibly weakening of the anti-discriminatory rules. Regulators are looking for ways to ensure lower income buyers have access to loans and even bank accounts.
And a New York court is putting a stop to the use of DNA database searches by police departments in the state. A panel of judges say they made the move because New York lawmakers never approved the practice for fighting crime. The judges suspended the use of familial DNA searching. It's a method where police agencies search DNA data for close biological relatives of people who have been at DNA crime scenes. A group of black men filed a suit saying they were worried because they were targeted by the investigation. They say it bothers them because their biological brothers were convicted of crimes and had their genetic information stored in the DNA databanks that could later be linked to them.
A Florida man says he was tased by cops for selling sugar cane and coconuts. Barris McKinney says police went way too far when they used a taser on him for loitering outside of a convenience store. Lauderhill police say they asked McKenzie to stop selling his items because he did not have a permit. They say McKenzie ignored them and kept selling his products anyway. Cops claim that he refused to show them his ID, and that's when they tried to arrest him using a taser 3 times before they could handcuff him. The 64-year-old Jamaican immigrant was charged with resisting arrest without violence and released on a $100 bond.
A black Chicago woman is suing hospital and 2 doctors for allegedly filing what she says was a racially motivated child abuse report. Jillian Robinson says she took her 10-month-old son to the Advocate Christ Medical Center back in April after noticing a mark on the back of the child's outer ear. The federal lawsuit says the white doctors assumed the mark was a bruise, even though they never did a full examination to confirm their suspicions. It turned out to be a birthmark. However, it was too late. The lawsuit says Robinson was questioned by social workers who wrongfully called her homeless. She said she had to fight to keep custody of her baby. Hospital officials said they are reviewing the incident. Yes, originally she called to a regular doctor to try and get an appointment April 25th, 2021, but she felt concerned, so she went to the hospital. And that's what happened after that. But you have to understand, this happens more often than not. There's a number here, around 37% of U.S. children experience a Child Protective Service investigation by the time they're 18 years old. 53% of black children in the nation experience a Child Protective Service investigation before they're even adults. So you see how high that number is. You see how sometimes you're being judged by the color of your skin. You're being judged by your race, and they're assuming that there's wrongdoing in your household. She put her life on the line going to check on her child, and as a result, it backfired on her.
Yeah. I mean, Romeo, just to recap a couple of very important parts here is that the baby was 10 months old, right? So we're not even talking about a child that can speak and feel as to what's going on. We're talking about a 10-month-old child. Also, just to your statistic there, very important because black families, this, of course, being from Chicago, this breaks my heart. This breaks my heart to hear this. And I used to go to Advocate. That's where I would go to get all of my healthcare services done. And so black families, like you said, are subject disproportionately to these type of welfare investigations. And so something needs to be done so that we're not judged by the color of our skin, because this shouldn't just be a statistic that we just continue to let people know about. Something needs to be done about this, because it's not fair.
It's definitely not fair to me. When she took her son, I believe, to the hospital, she was concerned, like you said, Romeo. She had went to, she called the nurse's line. She had taken him to another hospital. She took him home, and she wanted to wait and see if it went away. So the doctor's office, when she finally got there and they were looking to see what was happening, they put a slit in the birth mark to see if anything oozed out, to kind of see what it was. And when nothing happened, that's when they realized that it was a birthmark. But instead of saying, I'm sorry, we made a mistake, they said they need to do further testing. Now, here's the thing. She was called homeless. She wasn't allowed to take her child home after that. She had to stay in an unfamiliar place for a week. And even when she stayed in an unfamiliar place, she wasn't allowed to be at home be alone without her child. So here's the thing. We have to do better. We are allowed to care about the welfare of our children. My mother was a foster mother. And so once that child gets taken from you, it's really hard to prove otherwise. Yeah. So kudos to this woman for fighting and doing everything that she could to make sure that child didn't get taken away from her. Because once your child is taken, you have to prove why the child should be, back in your care. And that's really, really hard.
And meanwhile, they're in that system. So.
And they're in that system, and which is a really hard system to fight out of. So.
Yes, it is.